Is there a way to activate the Apple AI features of macOS Sequoia on an maybe even unsupported Intel Mac? Let's find out. Welcome to Jesse's Flying. And there are some rumors that I read on the forums, on Discord or on Reddit that some users suggest you could somehow activate Apple AI features that come with macOS Sequoia 15.1 and 15.2 on Intel Macs, or maybe even on officially unsupported Intel Macs like this MacBook Pro 2015. So in this video, let's try it, okay? Let's talk about Apple AI. What kind of features does Apple already have, and how are they integrated into macOS Sequoia? What are the differences between maybe a macOS install on an Apple Siliicon Mac and on an Intel Mac? And the ways that I read, let's try it to trick macOS into thinking that Apple AI is supported and switch it on, and if it works. Let's just first talk about the Apple AI features. So the features are, for instance, writing tools where you can just select the text in your email and have it rewrite friendly, professional or concise. Priority notifications, just sort your most important notifications to the top. You have memory movie where you can just give it a description of photos and it creates a movie out of photos that fit that description. You have the Genmoji feature where you can just describe an emoji and it creates one, same as Image Playground where you can just describe a picture and it creates a picture for you. The Image Wand feature, for instance, on the iPad, you can just have a sketch somewhere in your presentation and the AI selects either a realistic photo or creates a photograph of that sketch. And Siri has some new features. For instance, it has natural language feature, it has the personal context feature, and you can now type to Siri. Officially, Apple requires a device with an Apple Siliicon chip, that means at least M1 or newer, or an A17 Pro chip, which was in the iPhone 15 Pro. And so the reason for that is that they all have a neural engine. That's part of the processor that handles AI and machine learning code. And all of these chips, like the M1, the A17 Pro, up to the M4, which is the latest, have a 16-core neural engine. The Apple M1 can take 11 trillion computations a second, and that goes up to 35 to 38 trillion operations per second on the M4 chip. And obviously that is a lot of computational power that are in these chips that are specially made for AI and machine learning. So the first question would be, if we activate Apple AI on an Intel chip, and a very old Intel chip like this 9-year-old 2015 MacBook Pro, the CPU and the GPU have to do all the calculations, at least the 11 trillion operations per second that the neural engine normally does. So basically it will be very slow. But in all its presentations about Apple AI, Apple showed two more ways how these devices can interact with the AI. It's not only on-device computation, where you would need the neural engine, but if that computational power is not enough, Apple reaches out to the neural network, the Apple AI cloud servers. So the question would be, if we can activate Apple AI on an Intel Mac and macOS sees, okay, the power is too less for that question because the CPU is calculating too slow, does it reach out to the Apple AI servers and let it run in the servers, send it back? Like Siri works on all these Intel Macs, and Siri, the only thing Siri does on the device is recording your voice, sending it to Apple servers, have it calculated and computed there and send the result back. So there is a chance, as some users say in the forums and on Discord, that Apple AI just notices the device computation is too slow and sends it all into the neural network of Apple. Second is that you can activate ChatGPT for Apple AI and for Siri. If you activate that, Apple takes your request, sends it to ChatGPT, anonymized, and then gets an answer back from ChatGPT. So that would be another way, if your device is too slow to handle your requests AI-wise, that it would just send that to ChatGPT and back. So there are some chances that you could activate and run Apple AI on an Intel Mac, as it's just relying more and more on the outside cloud computing resources like the Apple AI network or ChatGPT. Another argument why it could run on Intel Macs is that the AI framework, the machine learning framework CoreML that Apple has since a few years already, that is, for instance, integrated into Xcode, where you can just create machine learning apps or apps that use machine learning and AI, is there already a few years and is running perfectly fine on Intel Macs. So the CoreML framework from Apple works on Intel. And for instance, you can check that, and I just did it on my Intel MacBook Pro, that if you have a photo and you open it in preview, you can have the live text feature where you can just select text and can look it up in Google, or if you have a phone number, you can already call that phone number. And there are few other apps that run on Intel Macs that already use AI features. So that is an argument of some others that the Intel chips are not that bad at computing AI features, and that maybe Apple just wants us all to use Apple Siliicon because it has such a fast and high performance neural engine. So for instance, you have Adobe Photoshop where you have AI features where you can instantly change the sky in a photograph. That works on Intel Macs. And even Apple's own Final Cut Pro has AI features, and at least one of them, the magnetic mask feature, works on an Intel Mac. The transcribe function, for instance, only works with Apple Siliicon, same as the spatial video features for your Vision Pro. But how would we activate Apple AI on an Intel Mac? Some users suggest changing the code of macOS, but as Apple integrated AI so deep into the system, for instance, the text rewrite function doesn't only work in Mail, it works in different apps and so on, you would just have a deep understanding how to rewrite Apple code, and with every update, when those files are renewed, you would have to do that again. And so, in my opinion, that's not a feasible way to do it. Another way would be to use OpenCore, what we already do, to install macOS Sequoia 15.2 on maybe unsupported Mac and spoof the Mac, so trick macOS into thinking it's a different Mac. So if we spoof this MacBook 2015 into a Mac Mini M1, the macOS here might think and check what kind of model am I running on. Oh, it's a Mac Mini M1. Let's activate Apple AI. And so that is, in my opinion, the most feasible way if it works. And we're gonna try this now live here in that video. Okay, I didn't try it yet. To spoof this MacBook Pro 2015 into a Mac Mini M1 that is here. let's see if it boots. Let's see if there are some Apple AI features, if maybe the new Siri and Apple AI option appears in settings. If then Apple AI uses either the CPU or uses cloud computing AI or ChatGPT, or maybe it's just slow and works or works not. And to do that, you have to alter the config plist file from OpenCore. That is the config file for OpenCore that sets all the parameters to boot macOS Sequoia. And we have to give the MacBook Pro the hardware infos of the Mac Mini M1 so that macOS thinks it is this instead of this Mac. Obviously, the OpenCore Legacy Patcher or any tools that are meant for OpenCore can only generate those numbers and those serials for unsupported Macs, because that's the reason what OpenCore is for, to have unsupported Macs run newer macOSs. So in this case, I will just use the correct real numbers from my Mac Mini M1, and obviously I won't show it here in the video. So I will enter that into the config plist, and then let's see if it boots. It's actually running macOS Sequoia 15.2 with all root patches and everything installed. So let's get into it, change the name and the numbers, and see if it boots and if it identifies itself as a Mac Mini M1. So at first we have to mount the EFI partition where the OpenCore bootloader and its config plist file is. To do that, we say disk util list to see all the different identifiers. And we are looking for the EFI partition that is up here and is disk 0 as 1. So we now say sudo disk util mount disk 0 as 1. It's asked for the password, and now the EFI volume is mounted. Now we can just go into the Finder and we see the EFI partition is mounted here in locations. So we go to EFI OpenCore, and there is the config plist. I will open that with a text edit, and there is a lot of information from OpenCore in it. We just scroll very far down and we go to the part where it says, that's not far enough, we need to go to platform info. That is the key we are looking for. And now when we look on the website of Dortania OpenCore install guide, it gives us some info what to enter where. And that is here in the platform info part, where you have all those informations, obviously for unsupported Macs, but we want to enter the Mac Mini M1 info there. So what we need is type parts is in the name. We have serial, we have board serial and SMUU ID. And here they mention where it goes to. Type goes into system product name, serial, system serial number, board serial to MLB, and SMUU ID to system UUID. And we need automatic yes to use that platform info and not to use the data hub, NVRAM, and SMBIOM sections of that config plist. A lot of technical stuff, I know, but we go back to the text edit and we go to automatic, and there is a false key, and we change that obviously true. And then we have a look, not the data hub, there is the generic key, and then you have MLB, that is, as we saw here, the board serial. Then we have system product name, system serial number down here, and system UUID. So we need to enter those 4 parameters into that, save the file and reboot that MacBook. I will enter now my Mac Mini M1 parts in here, won't show you that, and save the file. So the config plist is changed. Let's reboot the MacBook Pro and see what it does. Restart. And see if it still boots, if it identifies itself as a Mac Mini M1, and if Apple AI will be activated. No. We have the forbidden entry sign. There is the OpenCore screen, and if we try to boot that, it directly says not allowed. So why didn't that work? Because we tricked macOS into thinking that the Intel MacBook Pro has an M1 chip. The M1 chip has an ARM architecture and not an x86-64 architecture like the Intel chip. So macOS tried to load the ARM kernel on the Intel chip, which doesn't understand the code. So the spoofing method cannot work. It could only work if macOS would load the Intel kernel and would then be tricked into thinking it has an M1 chip, which doesn't work because you would have to change all the information during boot or after the initial boot. macOS has 3 kernels. So one kernel obviously is the ARM architecture for the M1 up to the M4 Apple Siliicon chips. One other is the one that's loaded here in the MacBook Pro, that is the x86-64 kernel, but in the version H, which requires AVX2. Since macOS Ventura, since the Mac Pro 2013 was dumped by Apple and not officially supported anymore, Ventura and newer needed AVX2 kernels. So why can we run macOS Ventura, Sonoma, Sequoia on Macs without AVX2, like the Mac Pro 2012 cheese grater and so on? Because in the ARM version, Apple still has the old kernel x86-64 for non-AVX2 machines. Why? Because the ARM kernel has a feature that's called Rosetta. And Rosetta is meant to enable Intel code, Intel apps to run on ARM chips. That is a translation layer to have the newer ARM chips run the older Intel code. By the way, what we try to do is to run the newer code, the ARM code, on the older chip, which doesn't work, obviously. And so the idea of spoofing is not a good idea. For all of you who had that suggestion on Reddit or Discord or in the forums, it does work. We tried it. So there's one more thing, as Apple always says. As Apple transitions more and more into the ARM architecture with the Apple Siliicon, and it was Christmas a few days ago, I got myself a present, the new MacBook Pro with the M4 Pro chip. But I'm a Windows user most of the time. So I have games that only run on Windows. I have Microsoft Office, especially Word and Excel. I have the WinRAR archiver to pack and unpack files. I have like a hard disk encryption tool for an external hard drives to have it encrypted. I have so much other stuff that I'm used to in Windows that I'd like to invite you on a journey. It will be like more like a video log where I try to transition from my MacBook Pro 2019, which has an Intel chip where I run Microsoft Windows 11 on a boot camp partition on my hard disk, or macOS, whichever I need, to transition to the M4 Pro chip, to the Apple Siliicon world in macOS. And there will be a lot of different parts, like how does encryption work on the Mac, how does games run. I play, for instance, Diablo 4, Guild Wars 2, Path of Exile 2, and some other games. I have a huge library in good old games, GOG, which only work under Windows most of the time. And how are the different game loaders like Steam, Epic, Electronic Arts, Ubisoft, and for instance the Rockstar Games launcher, do they work on Apple Siliicon? Can you play Grand Theft Auto on the M4 Pro? Is it fast enough? Because with the Apple Siliicon you cannot connect an external GPU, an eGPU, like I have here with my MacBook Pro. It's a Radeon Vega 56 connected that work with macOS and Windows, where I can play my games. It only has Thunderbolt USB-C connectors. So what about music production? I have some external devices for music production with PreSonus Studio. How can you connect these? Do they work? I do obviously video editing, so iMovie should work fine. How fast it is compared to the Intel Mac, and so on and so on. So there will be a lot of parts with that video log, with the different challenges I face, and at the end, hopefully, we can see how easy it is to transition completely to macOS in Apple Siliicon, and to maybe forget Windows. Or do you need parallels with the Windows install on the Mac? Can you use crossover as a translation layer just to run Windows apps directly in macOS? What are the different solutions that are out there to run everything you need on Apple Siliicon? So if you haven't yet, I would recommend you subscribe my channel, click the bell for notifications, and then follow me in the video log and on my journey to transition from 5-year-old hardware to brand new hardware with Apple Siliicon. Have fun here on my channel. Thank you so much for watching. See you soon. Bye bye.